Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where we apparently have, an active job. This isn't an active craft. I got confused there for a moment, but it's all good. We know that we want more power in this initial stage. So let's hop into our build system here, and I want to extend up these guys. We can't extend the overall craft, but we can absolutely extend up these boosters to ridiculous proportions where, we might have some collision issues. We'll see how that goes. And our thrust to weight in our first stage at surface level is 1.8. That's actually not too bad. We had plenty of thrust to weight headroom there. We could actually extend this up a little further to be about here or so. This is potentially going to create some problems. Let's see what that does. Let's put this out on the alley pad. And we're going to launch this into a 60, not a 60. I'm going to launch this straight up at first. Okay, so straight up we go. Excellent. And we're going to go straight up until our apoapsis is like 2 kilometers, at which point we're going to head over to 85. Okay, I'm taking us over to 85. There we go. I want to just slowly be drifting this over right now until we reach about 70. Okay, we're going to be lifting this off in the eastward direction, 70 degrees, and we're just going to burn here. We're going to watch that apoapsis going up, and how much fuel do we have in these tanks? About 50% remaining. Okay. So I just want to burn like this, building up that apoapsis. I want to be in orbital mode here, and we can see that the orbital prograde is moving its way up. Cool. So we're just going to burn like this until these fuel tanks burn out, and it'll be interesting to see how they go about detachment. I don't know if that'll be good or not. We'll find out. They might blow back and take out these tanks, which would be, of course, mildly problematic. And by mildly, I mean significantly problematic. So we're about 8% fuel remaining in these stages. Okay, they are burned out. So we're going to get rid of those, and this is still burning nicely. So we can see that's got a lot left. I'm going to lock our velocity to prograde at this point. And I just want to push this apoapsis up to 500. We are not working on getting huge amounts of lateral velocity right now, although we probably could think about that. Let's think about what that might look like. Let's bring that over to purely horizontally here. And let's just get some lateral speed. How much DV do we have in this? Only 600. So this still isn't quite as much as I would like. We may boost up the power of just this engine. Or we may look to have this be a more vacuum optimized engine. That could be interesting, actually. Okay, so this puts us into this position right here, right? And if we were to detach this, this would start burning, but we are further beyond where I want to be here. So that is absolutely understood. Getting to a better specific impulse on this engine is interesting to me, though. So what that would end up meaning is we would want this nozzle length to be a lot longer, like this. And the specific impulse would be at 262 seconds, like that. That would definitely be a lot more efficient, but we're going to run into issues with it like this. No doubt about it, this is going to be eating up a lot of heat here, and that's probably going to end up burning off. So we're also probably too tall, right? Yes, we're too tall at this point. So that is definitely a concern. We can drop this back down, but what I'd like to do actually is just drop the size of this down to about 90%, about like that. So the throat size, this decreases efficiency in vacuum. So I want to have this guy open, and we can see that our thrust to weight here is 1.63. I don't actually want it to be 1.63. I want to drop this right on down to have a throat size of 50%. that increases our specific impulse in vacuum. So that's going to make this engine a lot more efficient at vacuum, but at takeoff, it's going to be less efficient, which means that I want these engines to be slightly more powerful. So I'm going to bump up their size to about 160, like that, to try to compensate. And let's see what that does. So you can see the price on this is just creeping upward, but we do have large amounts of headroom for this, so I'm not too concerned about it. We're just going to go, once again, straight up. The mage engine is taking over-expansion damage. Okay. That is noted. So, is this a percent? When this gets to 100%? I'm assuming that's going to break. Yeah, okay. So that's good to know. So overexpansion damage means that it is not going to want to be burning at that point. That's okay. We're getting basically no thrust to weight out of it at this altitude anyway. So the way that I'm going to fix this is I'm going to move this center mage engine, which is this one, to here. That will fire when these side tanks fall off. So that means that we don't need any fuel flow in here anyway. So that is understood. Let's see what that puts our apoapsis at, and if we have the thrust to weight to get this thing into orbit. I think that our DV is going to be significantly better, but I am concerned about not having enough thrust to weight. This is 1.6, so that is definitely noted. Let's bring this over to about 70 degrees, and we're just going to burn it there. And you can see that we're only burning the boosters at this point. So we're not having fuel flow through. These boosters are going to burn slightly longer, but we do have a little bit less thrust to weight, but I'm not too concerned about that. We actually had significant heat issues as we got into the upper atmosphere previously. Well, not really like overheating issues, but we had plasma buildup. So that is absolutely fine. And we're just going to use this to push up our apoapsis as much as possible. You can see here we've got some drag going on. So that is looking fine for the moment. We've got about 40% fuel left, and our apoapsis is definitely getting on up there. It's about 30 kilometers, and we're punching through the more dangerous portions of the atmosphere here, so this is all looking reasonable. I'm going to continue to burn here for a while. Apoapsis is looking decent. I would like to lock to velocity prograde at this time. So our apoapsis is out of the atmosphere. We're going to have these engines burning out shortly. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They are burned out. So off we go, and we're now utilizing this engine. So you can see here, actually I want to bring this pitch down to like 0. You can see here that our thrust to weight is incredibly low at 0.15, but we have a fair amount of additional DV here. Is that enough for us to make it to orbit? The answer is actually no. So that is certainly noted. We may have to increase the size of those side boosters significantly. Absolutely significantly. So that is definitely a concern. This burn time is 12.6 minutes, which really means that we can't burn laterally like this. We're going to have to sit at prograde. I don't know that this is actually going to get us into orbit. I don't think it is. Just looking at the sheer amount of DV that we have and what we need to get into orbit, I don't know that that's happening. I think our thrust to weight is currently too low. So we could definitely ditch these fins. That's an option. Since we have the gimbaling, I don't think we need them, and they're probably dead weight. So that is definitely an option. You can see we're not making much lateral velocity right now, and burning prograde here, this just isn't ideal. So this is now a vacuum-optimized engine, and it does a great job if we were in orbit, but it's not a great orbital insertion engine. So let's bring this back and think about an orbital insertion engine for this stage. So that is currently a mage engine, and there are other types of engines that I think are intended specifically for orbital insertion. So the spirit engine is about precision. The gnome engine, yeah. So this is capable of small orbit. Yeah, I think orbital insertion is still kind of the mage engine's job here. We could definitely think about replacing this gnome engine, though, with a spirit engine. And that would end up going here. And we could also think about replacing this engine, this gnome engine, with a spirit engine. So that would be fine. Let's get that going here. I want to have this guy attached right up in there. There we go. And let's just focus the camera there. Perfect. So this engine is obviously not going to be doing anything, right? That's understood. I want to go into here. This is currently a monoprop engine, but we're going to want this be a liquid engine. Maybe a pressure-fed engine rather than a gas generator. I'm thinking a pressure-fed. This is going to be over Luna, and we can see our starting thrust to weight is 0.2. That is not great. So the nozzle throat size, our efficiency here is going to be really, really good, but we need to have a lot more thrust to weight here. So we're going to have to increase the size of this engine pretty significantly. Let's put it at 100, and our nozzle throat size is going to have to go up a lot too. So to reach 1.0x, it would be here. Ending thrust to weight also of 1x? I'm not sure I trust this. Propellant mass of 0. This is Carolox here. This is Carolox. Okay. It's because there's an interstage in between. Get out of here, interstage. So this would look something like that, right? And that's understood. So we could increase the overall diameter here, and that's a theoretical option. So that would end up being something like this. This would be 1.0x, with the ending thrust to weight being 1.16. We have fuel transfer mode at normal. Again, I'm not entirely sure that that's true. If we were to drop this down, we could do something kind of like that. This would still be a liquid-fueled engine, and we still want this to be pressure-fed, but we could try this at about 200%, like that. This is now saying 0.33 and 0.38. Okay, what is stage 1 here? Stage 1 is this spirit engine. Okay, so that's not great, for sure. And that's because of the nozzle throat size. So we would have to increase the nozzle throat size to be about here. And that's still low thrust to weight. I kind of prefer the gnome engine that we had here previously. I think that was better. So let's bring this back and put that gnome engine back in. This interstage should be a little longer, to be honest. It should be about there in order to fully cover that gnome engine. So it'd be something like this. And we can see that when we burn this stage, which would be stage 4, yes, stage 4 here, this is now saying that this would be 0.32 over Luna and 0.37. And that's not true. Okay. I don't know what our actual thrust to weight here would be. This is not our actual ending thrust to weight. This is when this burns out, but it's assuming that we're not going to burn out these. And these would burn out first. So it would definitely get up over 1, but it's not there right now. So we would have to increase the size of it a little bit for sure. Let's put it at about 125%, and that's still going to probably need some work. Once we get to Luna, we can find out. And we'll just leave it something like that. Now, this engine out over here. This is absolutely going to need some work. And this doesn't need to be high thrust to weight. So I want this to be pressure fed, minimum nozzle throat size, and minimum nozzle length. We can have the size of this be about 125%, like that. And then this interstage would go in about like this. Now, we might be a little too tall to go out onto the alley pad. Let's save this craft and, yeah, overwrite that. And I want to modify this to be, once again, let's see, this is currently set up to be over Luna. I want this to be over Drew, 1.57. Okay, this nozzle length needs to be dropped down. So the sea level efficiency here would peak at about, well, here. The nozzle throat size should be increased. Okay. So this here, the nozzle length should be decreased in theory. Well, actually this peaks about here. So at about 60%, that seems fine. And the nozzle throat size seems okay too. For this guy, the nozzle length should be, once again, about 60. And the nozzle throat size at 100 would be ideal. The size of this would need to go up to about 175, perhaps? Maybe about 170. Something like that. Okay. So now what we have is, in terms of our staging, we have these 5 that fire right now. This mage engine, what is this 5th one? That's the spirit engine up here. Okay, so that should be firing here. Yes. So that's some alterations there. I'm not convinced that this is going to get us where we want it to go, but it's going to be interesting for sure. We can see this is about 1.6 thrust to weight when we lift off with just these. So that seems reasonably fine. And then this is going to kick on at a way higher thrust to weight than it probably should. We'll see what that feels like. Okay, so that's some alterations. It's too tall? Yeah, it is. By 1.6 meters. I am not shocked about that. So we need to lower this by 1.6 meters. So that's going to go down to like, is this correct? Actually, this interstage needs to be dropped down to about there. Is that correct? 1.1 additional meters needs to be dropped off of this tank. Is that correct? Let's put it at exactly 25 and see if we're still good. We are still good. Can we bring this up to 25.5? No. It needs to be 0.2 meters lower. So this is the absolute maximum that we can eke out of it. Okay. That sounds good. Let's save that and give it a go. So that's going to go on the alley pad, and we've definitely made some significant changes to it. I don't think that this is going to be enough to get us where we want to go just yet. So we're going to move this over to a 60-degree pitch and immediately take off and pivot right on over. So that is going to be a very significant pivot. Noted. This is in the east direction? Okay, perfect. So off we go in the easterly direction at a 60-degree pitch this time. So we're going to continue to burn like this until these are out of fuel, which is currently correctly indicated here. This center stage is not actually going to light up until a little higher in the atmosphere, and we might want to tune it to be correctly efficient at that altitude, but I'm not sure what the altitude is going to be, and we'll determine that here. This is a very, very, very heavy payload, by the way. This is a significantly heavy payload. So that's why this is taking a little long to get this rocket design down. We'll get there. We could increase the radius of the rocket as well, and that may end up being quite worthwhile. We'll see about doing that, but for now, this'll do. So we've got about 25% fuel left. I want to be, yeah, we're in orbital mode here, and we can see that our current apoapsis is about 50 kilometers. I want to bring this over to prograde at this point. And we can see our altitude is going to be somewhere around 35-ish kilometers, probably, by the time these burn off. So 2, 1, 0, they're gone. Excellent. So we're just going to continue to push up our apoapsis by burning prograde. We have quite a lot of orbital velocity this time, but this is not going to have that much burn time. Again, we should probably tune this for being optimal somewhere around like 50 kilometers is what I'm thinking. So that'll get us some additional efficiency out of this stage, but this is definitely kicking us up pretty close to orbit here. And we'll see what it ends up doing for our apoapsis. Currently 250. We're targeting for the 500 apoapsis here, and that'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so at this point, we would prefer not to be in this stage, for sure. The thrust to weight on this is 0.02, and that's not great. This is only 659 meters per second as well. Again, this is a huge amount of mass to propel. We did tune up our specific impulse here quite a bit, so that's noted. As far as time to apoapsis goes, I don't think this is going to get us into orbit. Our lateral velocity is quite low. The thrust to weight on this is extremely low, and this is intended to be utilized when thrust to weight doesn't actually matter. The only thing that matters is delta V. And in this situation, thrust to weight absolutely does matter. So that is noted. This is operating at peak efficiency, but it's going to take an hour to burn through this delta V. So I think that that is definitely a design flaw. Let's bring this back yet again. This is a lot of iteration, but we're learning a lot about how rocket design in this game works and how to tune these engines, which is very, very fascinating, by the way. I'm very interested in that. So let's go to about an order of 50-ish kilometers here. And we can see our specific impulse on this engine is 242 seconds at that altitude. So we want to tune that in, for sure. So the nozzle length could be changed. That's going to give us some height issues. So 262 seconds. Okay, I'm going to undo that. And let's see about just changing the throat size. Just doing that earns us quite a lot, and that doesn't get any additional distance here. So that seems good. Next, what I want to do is I want to take these guys here, and I want to turn off that symmetry. So we're going to do that for right now, and I want to grab this tank, and I want to increase the radius of it. So we're going to bring this up to about 2-meter radius, something like that. That's a lot more fuel, and these engines are probably not going to be strong enough. So that is absolutely understood, and I'd like to attach that here, but we know that we're going to need to change the positioning of this attachment. So that's going to need to be about here or so. Maybe even like here. And then bring this guy up to there, and then attach in this, and have that go up to about 2 meters. Something about like this. We could even squeak in a little bit more height here and have it be something kind of like that. Now, these engines. This is obviously not going to lift this off, but we added some additional space here so we can increase our size, bringing this to about 220 or so. Something kind of like that. So you can see that this thrust to weight right now is going to be 0.9. Okay. So if we take this, we turn off the fuel transfer mode. Actually, we could have it on. We may want to. And we're definitely going to want to run this in quad, like so. That's a lot more mass, right? You can see our thrust to weight is only 0.15. So to that end, I'm going to put this engine back in here. That boosts us up to 1.2. So this is not enough in terms of power. We need more power here. That's understood. So that is going to mean that we want to possibly grab these engines here and further increase their size. We could also reduce their nozzle length and put that at about 30%. That'll reduce their specific impulse somewhat. We want this to be at sea level. Yeah. That'll reduce their specific impulse, but we don't actually care that much about specific impulse for these engines. So I'd like to have these at 250%. These are going to be very expensive. You can see our price is absolutely ballooning, but then we can increase the nozzle size until we are right on the ground like this. So that puts us at 1.4 thrust to weight. It's not ideal. I'm wondering if we can maybe tune this up to about here. Is that too tall? It is. Okay, so that is not necessarily surprising. Not necessarily surprising at all. There's a lot of ways that you can design rockets in this game. I kind of like that. Let's get rid of these to save a little bit of weight, and that is still 1.4. Let's deal with that size issue. So we're going to need to come in here, select this part, and we're going to need to tune down this nozzle length down to, let's try 45. Okay, that's not good enough, so we're going to have to take it down to about 40%. Maybe we can get it at 42? That works. Beautiful. Let's see how this goes. I don't want to change our heading. 90 degrees, thank you. And we're going to set our pitch all the way over to 60. And off we go. Overexpansion damage on the Mage engine. Okay, that is noted. We'll see if that continues to be a thing as we get altitude here. We'll see if it ends up blowing up. We're seeing shock diamonds there, but overexpansion damage is definitely an issue for us. That's 50. That is 60% damage as of now. It's slowing. And now it's holding. Okay, so we're no longer taking overexpansion damage. That's noted. We're at about 50% fuel here, and you can definitely see that our overall velocity is a lot lower. Our thrust to weight started off quite low, but it's pretty decent now. So that's looking okay. Apoapsis is pushing on up. And we've got good thrust to weight until we ditch these side tanks, but there's a lot more fuel in them now. So that's looking much better. Thrust to weight is up to 3.5. Okay. So let's move this over right about now. I'm moving to prograde. And we're going to burn here for about 25% of our fuel. So that sounds good for the moment. We are at an apoapsis of about 140 kilometers. We want to continue to raise that up quite significantly because we need a lot of lateral speed. Well, really, we want to be burning horizontally right now. We've got 10% left. Let's just drop this pitch over to 0 right now. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and side boosters are dry. Okay, so we can see our thrust to weight here is now 0.57. That is much better, and our apoapsis is very, very high right now. In fact, we can cut our engine. We're basically at orbital velocity, and we can plan a burn here to circularize. So that would be 667 kilometers to circularize. So that would be something kind of like that-ish. So it's going to be a 2.9 minute burn, and we can just coast up to here. And then we can commence this burn. We've got 1.18 kilometers per second, and our surface velocity is, well, I want to be in orbital velocity. We definitely need a fair amount of orbital velocity to make it into orbit here. This is going to be about 700 meters per second. So we'll have some leftover DV in this stage in order to do some maneuvers to get out to Luna. What this is not going to have is enough to get to Luna. So that's a concern. And this stage up here still needs some love. So we're going to have to work on that, but I'm relatively content with this Ascent stage at this time. I think that worked really, really well. We actually overburned this a little bit, and we are able to get ourselves into orbit nicely, still on this stage, so that definitely was highly effective. I like it. We're about 65% done with this burn right now. We are in orbit as of now, so that looks good. We don't care about thrust to weight anymore now. So thrust to weight is now completely irrelevant, but you can see here, this stage is not going to have enough DV to reach Luna. So I don't think we'll have enough. Well, we would maybe be able to do this if we tapped into this earlier than we would like, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because the thrust to weight on this is going to be kind of low. We might want to just try going with this as is. I think we will. But that is something for next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.